And I'll just open it up with this. I think a lot of folks in this room are kind of wondering this. Can Europe still count on the U.S. to help guarantee its security going forward?
Yeah, I think it matters to us that Europe is stable. Big trading blocs over here. The the Transatlantic partnership's been beneficial for us. Stability is good when it comes to business. Yeah, but that you can't count on the same old crap. If you're not paying, well, if you're not paying 2%, you're going to get a rude awakening. The average American member of Congress is tired of trying to get people to do what they're supposed to do and still refuse to do. Now, the gap is closed, but I'll be talking about NATO here pretty soon. Trump's not going to tolerate this, nor should he. We met with the Canadian foreign minister. She's a great person. I don't want to get in a trade war with Canada, but the first thing out of everybody's mouth is that you're still not at 2%. And the new Mark is talking about going beyond 3%.
Did she say that they were willing to go?
Yeah, they said they're going to get to there by 2027. Great, do it.
Get to what? What?
Yeah, hit 2%, but get ready to move further. So when it comes to the Russia invasion of Ukraine, what are the lessons learned? Everybody who's supposed to be smart got it wrong. I've been coming here for 20-something years. I remember Putin was sitting on the front row, and it drove John McCain crazy. Like, why are you inviting this guy? He was selling stuff that turned out not to be real. It got to be fashionable in Europe to re-engage with Putin, thinking he was a normal person, and Russia's a normal country.
Yeah, they're not.
Well, they're not. In 2008, they make the incursion into Georgia. Everybody wrings their hand, and they end the war with no clear understanding what happens to Putin if he does it again. 2014, we have a war where he invades Ukraine. We end the war. We don't integrate economically with Ukraine because we don't want to be provocative.
Right.
We don't arm Ukraine because we don't want to be provocative. We don't tell Putin what's going to happen next if he violates the Minsk agreement because we don't want to be provocative. Trump comes along. They didn't invade because they're afraid of him. Biden comes back, and here we are again. So the three things we didn't do in 2014, Jonathan, we better do when this war ends. We better make sure that we economically integrate with Ukraine as a tripwire. If we do a minerals agreement where there are American businesses all over Ukraine, it's harder to invade. We need to continue to build up the capability of the Ukrainian military, arm them to the teeth, give them a bunch of F-16s, give them capability that would make it really hard to invade again. That's the form of deterrence. And if you can't get them into NATO right now, my idea with Boris Johnson is to be really clear. Tell Putin, if you ever do this again, if there's another incursion by Russia into Ukraine, that leads to automatic admission into NATO by Ukraine as a tripwire. And if you do those three things, he won't invade. If you don't, we'll be right back where we started.
Have you talked to President Trump about that?
No, not
thing?
the third one. I talked with Boris, but this is really like.
You think he'd be up for that?
Well, this is really kind of classic Trump stuff.
Yeah.
There are some countries that are nervous about putting Ukraine in NATO because we don't. Let's don't give them tanks. That'd be provocative. Let's don't give them jets. The whole place has been like almost annihilated. Forget about being provocative and be strong. There's two things that you can't do. You can't be weak and you can't appease.
Yeah.
Now, you can be strong and appease, but if you're weak, you're going to get more aggression. So what I'm hoping to happen here is that we can find a way here fairly soon to end this war in a fashion you don't have a third invasion that will make China less likely to invade Taiwan. So, making news today, here's what I'm going to do with China. I've got sanctions and tariffs laid out against China if they invade Taiwan. It's going to be pre-invasion sanctions. I'm going to introduce them in the Senate. I'm going to tell China, if you go in and forcibly take Taiwan or try to, here's what comes your way. That's not being provocative. That's being reestablishing deterrence. We have lost deterrence when it comes to the bad guys.
Would you have liked the vice president yesterday to have given some assurances to Europe that, we're going to take these negotiations in a fashion that incorporates you, the EU, the continent, and of course, Ukraine?
I really don't care about speeches at Munich. I really don't. I don't care about.
But interviews you care about, though, obviously.
Yeah, I love interviews with Politico in Munich. But I don't care if he meets Putin in Cleveland. I don't care if they talk. I don't care if they go on vacation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me what you do as long as you get it right. So Trump says rightly he did not start these wars. If he had been president, there had been no conflict in Gaza. Russia wasn't invaded. He's probably right about that. But you got to solve these wars.
Yeah.
You got to bring them. So President Trump owns the outcome. It doesn't matter what Pete says. It doesn't matter how many phone calls are made. What matters is how it ends. If it ends in a way to deter future aggression and to stabilize the continent of Europe, he'll get his fair share of credit. Gaza, if it ends the right way to keep normalization back on track, then that will be a home run. If it ends badly, he owns it. So that's why I don't get wrapped around the axle about who says what. You own the outcome here. There is no getting away from owning it. And I do believe that President Trump is the best person we could have in America to get a good deal for Ukraine.
He said yesterday, he was asked about who was to blame. He's for the war. He said, quote, "There's a lot of people to blame." Now, look, I understand he's looking for maximum leverage here at the bargaining table, and he's not going to want to piss Putin off in the moment. But Senator Graham, I sort of wonder about what, even in the past, the president's never been able to say that Russia launched a war of aggression against Ukraine. Why can't he just say that, do you think?
I guess he believes he's saying what he's saying to get the best deal he thinks.
Now, but I mean in the past, he's never said,
Who cares?
Yeah.
It's how it ends. Yeah. It was a war of aggression. Putin, all the people
But why can't he say that and you can so easily?
Well, because he's going to negotiate, not you.
Yeah.
I trust him to understand that the best deal to be had is from being strong, but also being reasonable.
Yeah.
So to all the people who are criticizing Trump, what did you do to get it right? I've been here so many times.
Yeah.
Every time I'd come, John McCain gets stuck to the roof. They don't get it. They don't understand who we're dealing with. John happened to be right. Now, what is Trump doing? He's trying to keep lines of communication. He's saying, I have a good relationship with Putin. I have a good relationship with Xi. That's fine with me. So I am telling President Trump and my colleagues in the House and the Senate, we better get this right.
Yeah.
And we better learn from 2014. If we do the same old thing, then we're going to get the same outcome. And I'm hoping that President Trump understands that. You're now in charge of ending this war. I agree with you. It would not have happened if you had been president, but it did happen. You are going to be the main person to end this war. And it has to end in a fashion that will create stability we have lost.
How do you negotiate with Vladimir Putin?
Huh?
How do you negotiate with Vladimir Putin?
Just from strength.
Yeah.
Listen, if you told him in 2014, you invade again, Ukraine's in NATO, they wasn't invaded.
Yeah.
If you'd have put Ukraine, Putin's a thug and a bully. He'll get away with as much as he can, as long as he can, until somebody stops him. I get that. So what do? You do what Zelensky's doing. You fight like hell.
Right.
The Ukrainians are going to go down in history as being the most effective fighting force with starting from scratch.
Not much, yeah.
I am in awe of what they've been able to do. We were told, Jonathan, Kyiv would fall in 3 weeks.
Right.
So
3 years later.
Yeah, 3 years later, they're still standing.
Right.
So when you come and tell me the same people tell me what to do now, go away. Yeah. I don't believe you anymore. When the people who are criticizing Trump are the same people who got it wrong before, I don't listen anymore.
So we heard a bunch of different things this week from Vance, Hegseth, and Trump in terms of negotiating, in terms of this war. How should we take all that? And is your best advice just wait for what Trump says?
Now, I think the best thing people can do is hand wring, because Trump loves that.
No, but seriously, though, come on.
No, I'm very serious.
Yeah.
you know, we've created a dynamic where three people are saying similar but different things.
Yeah.
Welcome to Trump world.
Right.
So the point is,
This is the world we're in. Yeah.
yes, J.D. Vance said, if Ukraine's not independent and sovereign,
Right.
we'll sanction Russia, maybe use the military.
Right.
Pete said this. The only thing that matters,
Right.
the only thing, and I know the president very well, is him getting involved, bringing this to a conclusion. And I will say this. If he offers what he thinks to be a reasonable deal to Putin,
Yeah.
and Putin says no, Putin will be making a serious mistake.
What will be the recourse?
A lot.
What does that mean?
A lot.
Yeah.
Sanctions, weapons. You know, you'll make Ukraine the largest land aircraft carrier in the world. A bunch.
Do you think that Hegseth and J.D. Vance have now learned to never get ahead of Trump?
No.
Should they?
I don't think that's the problem here.
Yeah.
I think Pete's saying some things that have some truth to it.
Yeah.
You know, I was with Zelensky all day yesterday. I like Zelensky. He's a brave, you know, great leader. And
What does he ask you about Trump?
he knows Trump pretty well, but I guess what I'm telling him is that you're telling me that Russia's going to invade Europe. They got like 200 brigades. They're going to take all of Europe. And I want in NATO. I said, well, if they're going to take all of Europe anyway, why do you being in NATO matters?
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of overselling going here. I'm not worried about Putin trying to invade and take all of Europe. I am worried about Moldova.
Yeah.
I am worried about places around him that
Yeah.
are not in NATO.
Yeah.
But if you get this war right, he won't do that.
What's your advice that you give to Zelensky about dealing with Trump? It's now, especially as we move towards
Just be strong.
Yeah.
Just tell him, hey, listen, Mr. President, I want to end this war. We fought too hard. Too many people have died. Too many people have been dismembered to end this thing without a just outcome. And President Trump gets that.
Tell us what's going on behind the scenes on this rare earth conversation.
A lot.
Yeah.
So, well, what happened? Ukraine has been seen as a burden.
Yeah.
Why did we get involved in this? This is not in our national
Sure.
security. I don't buy that at all. I think if you believe defunding the police is a bad idea, which I do, if you believe that you don't have cops on the street and people go and take stuff out of a store, that's not a good place to live.
Right.
Well, if you let one country take another because they make a claim that's not just, then that's like defunding the police. That leads to chaos.
It's a bad precedent. Yeah.
Yeah, bad precedent. So we don't need to legitimize that because there goes Taiwan.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing for me is that Ukraine has value. Literally has value.
Right.
So you can talk about democracy, and people love talking about democracy here, which is it's great to talk about democracy, but where were you in 2014 when they actually needed you? So Trump now sees Ukraine differently.
Because the rare earth stuff.
Oh, my God. I said, playing golf, I said, these people are sitting on literally a gold mine.
What did he say?
What do you mean? I showed him a map.
Yeah.
Look. You know, everybody says Putin wants to reconstruct the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire.
You should have a map of the rare earth on the golf course?
Oh, not on the golf course.
But later.
Later, yeah. He's seen this. Look, this stuff is, that's one of the reasons the guys wanting to go into Ukraine is take their stuff. I mean, there's trillions of dollars of very valuable rare earth minerals that he's trying to take by force. And I told President Trump, that's not a good way to do business.
So you made Donald Trump a Ukraine hawk by showing him that map, huh?
Well, I don't know if he's a Ukraine hawk, but I made him understand that if you let Putin get away with this, grabbing stuff at not his by force, other people will start doing it.
So what does it look like ultimately in a negotiation? Do we get access to some of that stuff?
Well, I think what President Trump is doing makes eminent sense to me. You should have done this in 2014.
Yeah.
You should have done a deal with Ukraine that benefits America, which would be a win-win for both countries. But nobody wanted to do it because they didn't want to provoke Putin.
Yeah.
Trump could give a damn about provoking Putin.
Right.
He's going to get a deal.
Right.
And I told Zelensky, I said, listen, you're negotiating with a guy that actually does know how to do a deal. They're talking about what would be a good deal for Ukraine, what would be a good deal for America. I think there's a deal to be had. It's going to change how Americans view Ukraine. We will have something to defend. We will have an economic interest in Ukraine we've never had. And that's a nightmare for Putin. And I think Trump could care less whether Putin likes this or not.
Right. So one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and that is the role of USAID, which appears to be now being absorbed by state. I talked to somebody who's in the field working for USAID, really alarmed about what has happened in a very delicate part of the world. And this person said, the biggest supporters of the work I've done have been folks like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, sort of hawkish GOP senators, and they always ask, why aren't you doing more? I'm not doing climate change, not doing DEI, I'm not even feeding babies. I'm doing something that the senators say, hey, you should be doing more of that. Why is it in our national interest to get rid of that program?
Well, I think the program has been tarnished and tainted to the point that it can't be revived.
By some of the extraneous programs?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a pretty hawkish guy.
Yeah, I've noticed.
But if you don't have soft power, you're making a huge mistake.
Right. So why are we getting rid of this? Yeah.
Well, we're getting rid of USAID because the people who ran it had a political agenda that wasn't foreign aid. They were more worried about their view, operas in Colombia, and a bunch of crap that I can't sell at home. They got nobody to blame but themselves. I don't hear any more, oh, what about USA? If you cared that much about it, you wouldn't have put it at risk. You care more about your political agenda and enacting some kind of political agenda rather than going back to the meats and potatoes of foreign assistance. But
please, but to the person who's in the field who's doing the Lord's work for the country.
Yeah, no, they're
what do you say to that person?
Well, the people, the leaders let you down because there's a consequence to their decisions. Now, what am I trying to do? We met with Rubio last night, a bunch of us. And Elon Musk said there's some things they do good. Well, let's take those things that we believe are in our national interest and make sure they survive and put them in a new structure that's not so tainted.
Understate.
Yeah, I don't care where it goes. Do you think the average American gives a shit about whether USAID is in a building or they care about what they're doing? And so USAID has become an unsellable product.
Did Rubio offer y'all a commitment last night to absorbing some of that?
I don't know where it goes, but he's given waivers. Marco is the right guy at the right time. We have Ebola people on the ground dealing with infectious disease control so they don't come here. We got like 400 tons of food we've already bought in Houston that's stuck at the dock. We've got the aid coordinator for the ceasefire in Gaza was laid off, now they're back. There's some things that need to get back up and running because they're vital. But at the end of the 90 days, here's what's going to happen. We'll have an overview and a better understanding of what works and what doesn't. It's been traumatic and it's been very, very difficult, but this process could actually result in having aid programs that people buy into. Because after all this scrutiny, if there's still support for what you're doing, you're in pretty good shape.
And bottom line, you're confident that the important, worthwhile programs are going to survive.
Yeah, I'm confident the American people like this. People in Washington may not like it, but the average guy and gal on the street in America is glad somebody's looking at these programs.
There is some scratchiness here in the last 24 hours about the temerity of an American politician coming to Europe and lecturing Europeans about how to run their countries and about the value of free speech and democracy. And I guess the question I have for you, Senator, is, what would be your reaction if the Chancellor of Germany came to Clemson, South Carolina, and said, you know what, the folks that should run the U.S. are Lindsey Graham and Mark Warner, and they're in the mainstream, and we shouldn't listen to the extremes like Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. How would that go over, do you think, in the U.S. if a European politician came and did that?
Well, I think what J.D. did today was speak about a dynamic in Europe that most Americans, at least I like what he said. I agree with him. There's a movement here that we're not going to deal with a certain segment of the German, the AAFD, whatever that party is.
Yeah, the AFD.
Well, instead of trying to suppress it and make it go away by government action, why don't you address why people feel that way? Why don't you realize that 20% of the German people feel that way?
Yeah.
Instead of saying Brexit it was driven by a bunch of fools in England, why hadn't Labour gone back into Brexit? So the point is, I like the idea that Europe needs to wake up to what's going on here. What's going on in Europe is going on all over the world. There's a pushback by the average person that we're changing society in a way that we feel like doesn't make sense. Yeah. Our life as we have known it has been turned upside down. Yeah. We can't be who we want to be anymore, and that's a real dynamic.
I got two final things for you. One I think you'll enjoy, and that is this whole talk about Trump and wanting to make Canada a 51st state, and he keeps bringing it up over again. I hear that you have a secret plan to get him to stop saying it.
Well, it's not secret. You can say anything you want to do, but I ain't no way in hell I'm voting to make Canada a state because they'll have 2 Democratic senators.
At least 2.
That.
Well,
yeah,
the provinces
that's done.
Get 2 each, right?
Yeah. I told Melanie last night, we're not going to absorb a bunch of liberals in Canada into our system.
Maybe they could make Trump an honorary Canadian or give him like a...
Well, you know, it is what it is with Canada, but this whole tariff thing, or reciprocal tariffs, I don't know how you argue against that. Yeah. So if you make a car in South Carolina and you sell it to Europe, there's a 10% tariff on the car. We charge 2.5% for a car made in Europe. That's coming to an end.
All right, so we're not going to have a colleague of yours from Alberta anytime soon.
Not with my vote, no. I love Canada. You stay a country.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about, just on a more poignant note here as we wrap up, Senator, is just to reflect on this conference in the absence of 2 of your good friends. Because when I think of the Munich Security Conference, and I think a lot of folks in the States do, they think of John McCain, and they think of Joe Lieberman, and they think of Lindsey Graham. This is the first time that you're the only one here. It's got to be a little bit different for you this time.
It's when I got on the plane, that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
I was looking around, where's Joe, where's John? So, you know, I'm the last amigo, but my goal is to create a new army of amigos. And people look back and, you know, applaud John McCain. When he was here, he was a complete pain in the ass to these people.
How so? Talking about defense
because,
spending?
like, you're wrong.
Defense spending? Yeah.
Yeah, you're wrong. You don't understand Putin. You know, you're not paying your fair share. Like Joe Lieberman, no better friend of Israel than Joe Lieberman. Yeah. And this idea of being strong, they represented strong. And so they're gone, right? Now it falls to me and others to pick up where they left off. And so how does this movie end? Yeah. I'm hoping that we can end this war this spring in Ukraine in a fashion that China will be less likely to invade Taiwan, that the people in Ukraine who fought and died feel like it was worth it, and we bring a level of stability we don't have today by making it hard on Putin to do it again. As to the Mideast, the idea that the Palestinians are magically going to disappear is not going to happen. If they want to voluntarily leave, they should be allowed to go, like anybody else, travel where you want to travel. The Arabs need to come in and take ownership of this file. We've probably provided far more aid as a country than most of the Arab world of the Palestinians. I'm looking forward to the plan that MBS comes up with. And the biggest change since I got elected to Congress in the Mideast is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. It was John McCain who introduced me to MBS. Yeah. Then you have the Khashoggi thing. Horrible. But things are changing, Jonathan. Women are driving. 38% of the women, people in the workforce are women. He's taking his country and he's modernizing the faith. And we were so close to normalization. Now, I want to end with this.
The Graham Accords. It's going to be called the Graham Accords.
No, I don't care what they call it. But
This is the normalization of relations between Saudi and Israel.
I went to Saudi Arabia. I was very hard on him after Khashoggi, and rightly so.
MBS, yeah.
Yeah. But the things on the ground are real. And they had to buy the Boeing 787 or the French Airbus. So Boeing convinced me to go. You could cut the tension with a knife because we had a lot of bad exchanges. And from that meeting, something new happened. He bought the 787.
Yeah.
Thank you for buying the jets. I've been there about 12 times. I see a willingness.
You're paying taxes there now, I think.
I don't think you pay taxes. But anyway, I'm an honorary citizen. But I've come to believe, and I hope history will judge me right here, that what he wants to do for his country to modernize the economy, to be the center of AI, can only happen with a brand change.
Yeah.
So I told him, Crown Prince, I couldn't give away a free trip to Saudi Arabia right now because most Americans associate it with bad stuff.
Right.
But the day that you recognize
it's not Myrtle Beach.
Just not Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
The day that you recognize Israel will be a huge ripple effect. The day that you have a defense agreement with the United States where we'll go to war for you is the ultimate brand change.
Yes.
On October the 6th, the Crown Prince met with Joni Ernst. They were all very excited that within a few weeks there would be a rollout of the outline of normalization between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and a political horizon for the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
Been working on this for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
October the 7th.
Yeah. There you go.
It was designed to set us back.
And it has. And it has.
Hearts have hardened in Israel.
Yeah.
I understand it. The idea of a Palestinian state has fallen out of fashion. 47,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly on television. The Arab world is pretty hot right now. So to John and Joe, if you're looking down, I am not going to give up on this. We're not going to let the attack of October 7th, brutal and barbaric attack, end this discussion.
What's the holdup now?
We're going to push through.
What's the holdup now?
Holdup now is finding a political horizon for the Palestinians that is enough for MBS and the Arab world to get in on the ground, reform the PA, rebuild the place in a fashion that the Arab world will accept and Israel can live with. If we do not get this right, Iran will have won. Yeah. Even though Hamas has been obliterated, Hezbollah has been crippled, Iran is weak. If we stall out on the idea of a new Mideast where the Palestinians and the Israelis can live together, then Iran will have been successful. And if Joe and John were here, they would be traveling with me to get this thing back on track. So I'm going to do this in their honor and to make sure that we don't lose the best chance in 1,000 years to change the Mideast.
Last question. How confident are you a year from now, as we sit here, you'll have that deal in hand?
More likely than not.
Lindsey Graham, folks. Give him a round of applause. Thanks a bunch. Thank you, Senator.